You should be on now.
Okay, yeah, it says on my computer that we are live streaming. So welcome everyone to what is going to be the last meeting of the school construction work group. It's been meeting through predominantly this fall to talk about issues related to the Knott Commission and other issues that have come up since the Knott Commission around school construction. You've got a packet that you should have had that circulated with about, I don't know, 2 pages of decisions that we have talked through, walked through, and now it's time to vote them so that they can be part of our legislation. So I'm going to call first on Rachel Heiss to go through decisions on calculation of state funding for school construction programs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this should be the first page behind the agenda in your packet. And just as a reminder, what we're talking about is how the IAC calculates the maximum amount of state funding that a public school construction project can receive. And it's a combination of the projected enrollment at the school multiplied by what are called gross area baselines, which are square footage amounts for per student and for certain types of spaces that are needed in the school, depending on the populations of students that will be attending that school. So there are the 2 parts to it, enrollment and gross area baseline. So at the top of the page are a couple of draft recommendations for your consideration relating to enrollment and how projected enrollments are calculated. And the first item has to do with adjacencies. And what that refers to is when a project is being proposed at a certain school, the schools that are adjacent to that school are considered as part of the, not as part of the enrollment, but as part of the feeder system. Like there's the potential that some combination of shifting boundaries might allow the school that you're proposing to build to be smaller because maybe some students can be accommodated in these adjacent schools. And so right now, the way that calculation works is that any excess capacity in an adjacent school is deducted from the projected enrollment for the proposed school, again, because of this idea that the school system could change the boundaries and send some kids to these different schools so that we're fully utilizing these other schools. The issue, and several school systems have brought this up, not just this year, but over the years, is that sometimes the excess space for students is in a certain grade, or it's in multiple grades, and it's not necessarily the grades where it's easy to shift students. And also there might only be 10 in one school and 3 in another school, and whatever. And so it's a little bit it makes sense from a mathematical perspective, but in terms of sort of feasibility and reality, it doesn't really acknowledge the challenges that the school systems would have.
Is that your phone?
Doing that.
Rachel, could I ask a question?
Sure.
It's been so long since I've been involved, I apologize, but when they are looking at this, is it the present enrollment or projected enrollment over a period of time?
It's projected enrollment from the time when it's first proposed before there's any planning done. It's a 7-year projection of enrollment 7 years out.
For this purpose as well as for...
Yeah, for all purposes, yeah. So, oh, you mean for the excess capacity?
Yeah.
I think it's a 7. I think they also use projections, but that would be a question for someone from the IAC.
Good afternoon. Yes, Madam Chair, the projected enrollments are used 7 years out so that we're
Hey,
matching.
I can't hear you.
Can you turn your volume up, Alex?
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Yes, projected 7-year projected enrollments are used so that we're looking at the capacities in the future and the demand supply balance in the future when the project would come to bear.
Including in the adjacent schools, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, so what the proposal is to ask the IAC to establish some guidelines and regulation that would put some sort of a threshold or a floor on how much available excess space has to be in a school before it would count against the enrollment of the project, the school with the proposed project. And just as an example, you know, there's sort of this goal of sort of a semi-stated goal that we want our schools to have a utilization rate of at least 85%. And so the flip of that would be 15%. And so that would be just an example of a threshold that the IAC might choose to adopt.
right.
And then the second item relates to asking the IAC to establish a process for appeals, for school systems to appeal enrollment projections to the full IAC. There are, you know, I think every school system has at one time or another had disagreements with the IAC staff over the projected enrollment for a school. And, you know, ultimately there is no, I mean, the IAC staff, you know, work with the school systems as much as possible, but at some point, you know, they make a decision, and presently the school systems don't really have an avenue to appeal that specific decision. You know, they can appeal the project, you know, but not that specific decision. So that would be the other recommendation.
Okay, any questions on the draft recommendations for determining projected enrollment?
I'll just make a comment that, you know, I support these changes. It's really complicated, which is why number 2 is important to have there.
Right.
Because the adjacent school might have some seats, but maybe it's the elementary school has seats, but it's a different feeder pattern. The secondary schools don't have seats. So it really needs to be a conversation, in my opinion.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay, we want to move on. Why don't we just move through this and then adopt the whole document unless somebody wants to pull something out. Draft recommendations for determining gross area baseline.
So this has to do with the amount of space that is allowed for different types of students and types of spaces in the school. And we, at I think a couple of meetings, there's been some discussion that as a result of implementing the blueprint for Maryland's future, that there are space implications for some of the policy changes that the blueprint is requiring. And so the general recommendation is to ask the IAC to study the space sufficiency standards and the square footage allowances that have implications from the blueprint, and then propose changing the gross area baselines if that is appropriate. And we've listed here a number of items. This is not necessarily all of them that the blueprint could affect space, including for English learners, community school space for providing wraparound services, collaborative planning spaces for teachers as we have more teachers in the school buildings and working individually with students, in breakout spaces, and also career and technical education. There's a significant increase in expansion in CTE
Right.
programs in the blueprint, and also apprenticeships, which might also require space.
Any discussion on that recommendation?
Only to suggest maybe it should be including but not limited to, based on what Rachel just said.
We
Okay.
can, definitely for drafting the legislation, we can definitely
All right, please note that.
be clear
Okay?
about that.
It's a good list.
It is, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, this, I'm editorializing now, but this really moves us in the right direction. Okay.
Madam
next-
Chair,
Yes.
is it okay to put forward a motion to adopt 1, 2, and 3?
Sure, we can do it now. Why not?
If it's okay, I'd like to put
Second.
forward a motion.
Okay,
Now, wait a
you got a
second.
second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to decision points related to school facilities assessment. And that would be Rachel still,
And Michelle.
and Michelle.
So let me just start off by giving you a little update on the work that the Department of Legislative Services has been doing with the IAC to verify the assessment data. We have been making good progress over the past several weeks, and we have been able to verify a significant portion of the data. There is still some outstanding data that the IAC will be providing to us by the end of this week, I believe, and we will continue to work with the IAC so that this first, the 2021, I guess we're calling it, assessment data, can be verified, and there can be confidence that the data is, at least it is what it is, but that the data that is being analyzed is appears to be accurate and complete to us.
That's great.
And with that, I think Michelle is going to walk through the decision
Mhm.
points.
Yep, thanks, Rachel. We, as staff, we tried to clarify the recommendations based on the comments that you made at the last meeting, just so that we're all on the same page. The work group has already agreed to the recommendation for the IAC to clearly identify ways for LEAs to be more involved in the assessment process and for the assessment to capture non-functioning assets in certain building systems.
Right.
So these are the recommendations that you held in the last meeting. I'll go through each of them. And I think the chair wanted to take them together at the end. So the first one is the priority fund shall begin in FY27, funded at $80 million annually. The Healthy School Facility Fund shall be extended until FY26. Number 2 is the IAC is not authorized to use the assessment data to determine any funding decisions until the IAC has created an integrated data system for the assessment data, including preventative maintenance schedules, where all details are accessible by local education agencies. The IAC may use the assessment data to provide context in IAC programs, but not to determine any funding decisions within the programs until May 1st, 2026. Just so the work group's on the same page, the last meeting, the work group was using the language of inform versus determine funding decisions. We actually got a letter of advice from the Attorney General, and the word inform had more of a legal significance than I think the work group intended. So we changed the phrasing to provide context in IAC programs, just to go along with the same intent that you guys are talking about.
Good.
B is the IAC may use assessment data to work with LEAs, fulfill legislative requests, complete any internal analysis or reports, and assist with any external reports. Number 3, it's the intent of the work group that a new legislative work group be formed in July 2024 to determine the MDCI categories and weights to be used for the priority fund in FY27. The IAC may not use the IAC draft MDCI calculations to inform or determine any funding decisions. The IAC shall publish in regulation how they plan to use assessment data when authorized under law to determine funding decisions. The work group encourages the IAC to comply with a state government article when issuing any statements that have general effect on the operations or procedures of the IAC, including guidelines, rules, statements of policy, or interpretation. The IAC shall incorporate the attached sufficiency standards and process changes for future facilities assessments, beginning with the 2022 facilities assessments. We did send these, they're on the next page. We sent these to the facilities planners and they had no issues with the changes.
Good.
Number 6, the IAC shall submit certain documents through budget requests, including JCR on how workgroup concerns have been addressed for the 2022 assessment of schools, JCR with the data dictionary, including how FCI is calculated, JCR submission on updated data sets to DLS at certain times, and number 7, the IAC shall work with DLS on continued data verification. So those are the 7 recommendations that we are putting forward.
That's very thorough. Is there any comment, questions about those recommendations? Senator King, did you have a comment?
I don't. I see Jan Gardner's got her hand up though.
Okay,
Yeah, just a quick comment and one suggestion on
sure.
number 3. I think it should be a recommendation of the work group rather than an intent of the work group to create a new work group in
Okay,
July of 24. And, otherwise I'm fine with these. I just do want to comment that when, we were in the NOT commission and we were talking about the assessment and the benefit of it, we had examples like we didn't really know if all the boilers in the state, were near the end of their useful life or at the beginning or what, and that this assessment was going to be for. So this assessment would give us that information, and it would also then, I guess I don't know if I should say inform or provide context to, how much funding was needed to improve those things. So we really haven't talked about, whatever the assessment comes out with, whether it's going to lead to an identification of a need for funding. So that's my only comments. Thank you.
very good.
Could I just,
Yeah.
I can't help but say that I believe that then Commissioner Gardner made that same point and recommendation in 2000 and whenever it was.
Mhm.
And we really do look forward to a good, thorough assessment, I
Right.
hope.
It
Yeah.
was 2003.
2003, thank you.
I just happen to have just found some copies of that report hanging around my office.
Did you?
I was
did.
going to guess 2004, Rachel, but I'll give that one to you.
It was published in 2004, but the group finished in 2000.
At any rate, it's about time.
Yeah.
I did want to actually remind everyone that the NOT Commission and the legislation did set a goal of $400 million
Right.
in public school construction funding.
Mhm.
When it was, practicable to be met, and also that amount should be, I think, recalibrated, or I can't remember the word we used, once the facilities assessment was completed to determine if 400 million was a sufficient
Adequate.
amount or not.
Yeah, right. I was actually, Rachel, going to add at the end that we include in our report that at least $400 million each year for public school construction. But I like what you just said, that upon completion of this report, that we look to these findings to determine what level of school construction we may need. So I would include 7A, which would be to reference the $400 million in public school construction annually, and that we also look forward to the data driving the actual costs that we need, or actual budget we need for school construction in the future. That echoes, I think, Ms. Gardner's sentiments too. All right, can we have a motion on all seven, now 7A plus the addition of the 400 million?
I'll make that motion.
All right, got a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Very good. Thank you, Michelle. There is one other item that I'd like to take up. We've covered the 400 million for the public school construction, that kind of floor that we hope that we'll see in our budgets. But in a discussion last week, I think, when we were talking about currentizing our school construction findings, I think the treasurer of the state brought up a very important issue, which is energy and incentivizing, I think, our schools or districts to do something in net zero energy schools. And so I would like to ask this work group to adopt an incentive, along with the other incentives that we have adopted, a 5% add-on to state share and cost share formula per project if an LEA is building a net zero school. I think this is something that came up and was actually discussed by the Knott Commission. I think it's going to be coming up in several committees all over the place this year, as we find the Senate and House nearing agreement on a big climate bill. But I thought this would be important for us to add in here. That as an example, I think Michelle gave me an example of a school net zero school built recently in Howard County that did the calculation, and the state would have paid an additional $1.7 million for that project, towards that project, had they had this kind of recommendation. So I wanted to move that as well. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? I think we finished our business, haven't we, Rich?
Yeah, that's
I
it.
can't believe it. Now, before we finish though, first of all, I want to tell you, I just want to say to each of you who are members of this work group, how really great input that you have had, and great work that you've done, each of you, on different topics within the realm of this work group. And I really appreciate working with all of you. There are two people I would like to, well, three actually. First of all, I want to say to the staff, both the IEC staff and our own Michelle Lambert and Rachel Heiss, what a wonderful job you have done in very difficult times, sometimes during this process, to try to analyze the data and to keep us on track and to get the work done as we have. So I want to acknowledge both of you. Rachel, yeah, thank you. Rachel, you know, I wrote a letter recently. It was published in the Sun paper. And it talked about the next re-election, which I will not be a part. And I had a line in there that said that we have the best budget and policy staff in the nation. And Rachel, you are one of them. So thank you so much. And
Very
then,
kind of you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
you're welcome. And then finally, to the treasurer of the state of Maryland, Nancy Kopp. First of all, you are one of my mentors. I am excited for this new phase of your life and where you go. But I do want to say to you, thank you for being on this work group and taking the time, because it was the COP Commission which really got us to this point. And we are very pleased to have had your attendance on this committee, and all the best. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. I appreciate it. Let me just say, I'm looking up on my wall and there is Treasurer Billy James,
Mhm.
former state Senate President Billy James, who actually chaired a school construction endeavor even before I was around.
Yeah.
So it's a long tradition of support and investment in schools from the state level at Maryland.
Right, it is. And I fully recognize that, although we didn't get all of the data lined up the way we wanted to get the ranking and to do the priorities the way we wanted to, it is important to go there and to get there. It is the next best way that we can possibly look at funding, our schools, particularly those with the greatest need, that we want to understand what those needs are when we look at our priority funding in future years. So with that, thank you, everybody, and happy holidays to everybody.
Same to you all.
Safe.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.